Hey everybody, welcome back to Bitcoin Live with me, Nick, and my co-host Sid. Hey Sid.
Hey,
So another awesome show we got prepared for you. Tons of clips. I hope I can, show them all. But this is like an emergency extra broadcast because usually we do these every 2 weeks, right? One
yeah.
every 2 weeks. But there's so much stuff that we decided to, do one. This week again.
Yeah. There's so
And
much is
actually,
happening. We need to cover more stuff. We need more time.
yeah, I guess we could do one like every day, like I said
Yeah.
before. But this stuff. Well, let's start in Europe because Europe had some surprising event. I'm not sure if everybody noticed, but um, this, it's called a fuel dump, right? So the official story is that it's a Star X fuel dump from one of their rocket launches, and that it kind of looks like this. And this was witnessed, all over Europe, from Russia, Germany, UK, the Netherlands, France, Croatia, and Denmark. Officially it's a Falcon 9 rocket fuel leak or fuel dump.
Did you see it?
I didn't see it, but I was not outside at that
Yeah.
time.
Okay.
I haven't seen it, but I do have some really cool
No, a lot
pictures.
of people seen it. I'm just asking, like, did you have you seen it or not? But uh, the point is, I don't look. I've never seen a fuel dump like that making a pattern because it's a clear pattern and it sounds like it looks like a yin and yang. Also, it looks like a galaxy. It's crazy symbol. I don't. I don't know if a fuel dump can make a pattern like that.
Yeah,
That
well,
doesn't set with me. I
and
don't
what
know
what kind of
much
fuel
about.
are they using anyway? Right, that it looks like that.
Yeah. Also, they didn't tell which fuel is it because it's like glowing.
Yeah.
Why the fuel is glowing?
Hey, Steve. We got Steve in
Hi,
the.
Steve.
So, if everybody, if you have questions or comments, just drop them in here. Also, if you have any idea what kind of fuel they'll use, or if this is like a normal thing.
No, it's not normal because it never happened ever.
Well, that's not entirely true because that I'm gonna show you
Like
something.
this? Okay, sure.
Yeah. Oh, even weirder, to be honest. Okay, so this is like a moving shot.
Yes, a time lapse of it. But this is the same one, right?
Yeah, this is the same one. This is the same
Yeah.
one, but I'm just showing some because we have a lot of static images, but you also have a lot of moving
Yeah.
ones. This one is also really nice. This is slow motion. I think from Croatia, except for the music. Yeah,
Yeah.
it looks really bizarre, right?
It doesn't look like accident. It looks like a deliberate.
Yeah, it looks really strange. And then, of course, people pointed out similarities with other symbols. I think you sent me this one. Um,
Yeah.
so these are sort of, I think some of these are natural occurrences, or are these all symbols? These are probably all symbols. If I
They are all simple. I don't know if they're
No, they're not natural.
natural. Yeah.
No, no, but
So the bottom one doesn't look like it. It's just like a spiral. But the other three images are very much similar to like that. Also, it's very similar to yin and yang.
yeah, true, true, and the spiral form is, of course, well recorded throughout history, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's but there you said it has never occurred before, but I
As far as I know, I have to
when
be
I
very clear.
when I saw it, me and my brother immediately say, "Oh wait, we've seen this before," and I'm going to show this. This was in 2009, so I'm not sure how many satellites and rockets they were launching back then, but
A
this is
mysterious sight in the skies over Norway early this morning. A never seen before spiral of white light. Some said it had a blue tail. Norwegian newspapers have been bombarded with people who claim to have seen it. Question is, of course, what was it? Now, some of the guesses range from a Russian missile, which Russia is denying, by the way, to a comet or some other type of object.
Yeah,
It's
so I
definitely not a comment.
yeah, this is not a comment, of course. But yeah, maybe some kind of weapon system.
Okay, so at that time they didn't say it was a rocket fuel.
No, they didn't say rocket fuel.
Yeah,
No, but they did say it might be connected to a rocket.
no,
Rocket being one.
alleged, and
Alleged.
Russia denied it. So we can't
Well,
take.
Russia didn't say anything.
No, they said Russia denied it. So
Oh,
they
okay.
denied. Yeah,
Okay. Well, anyway, yeah. So I don't know what it is. It's peculiar.
I think it's a blue beam test.
It's definitely something weird. But anyway, so yeah, that's that. And of course, there were some other UAP sightings. I think you sent
I
me.
don't think it is UAP. I think it's man-made. I'm not even gonna think about that. It's UAP thing because it's not. It is something more than that.
But you had this one. I think you sent me.
Yeah,
Like from 2 weeks ago, from Daytona Beach, Florida, and 3 other from Lebanon. And
yeah.
you see a UFO over the ocean on opposite sides of the world. So I do have to admit that I don't really understand what I'm looking at here. I guess this.
So a lot of people say it's a sunset. It's definitely not a sunset. It's too dark for a sunset.
So it is the red spot that you're seeing there, right?
Yeah, and then there is a light over there.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't also really know what to make of this one, and then you also had this one. Um, let's see. I'm not sure about this one. A UFO crash over Washington.
Yeah, I don't know about it. Could be a fake video, but let's play it.
Okay.
Breaking news. Late last night, multiple witnesses reported seeing what many are calling a UFO crash over Washington, D.C. The mysterious object was observed cutting across the night sky before crashing near the city, leaving a thick trail of smoke hanging in the air for hours. Emergency services were quick to respond, and helicopters have been circling the area ever since. Despite growing speculation, there's no official word from authorities, and none is expected. The silence only...
But yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, you would have. I imagine that somebody
So
would have
this is
said
also a
something.
TikTok video, right? So
Yeah, I put very
people,
little.
and then because of the AI, it's very easy to create
Yeah.
images. So now you can't even trust a video. That's the big problem. And a lot of I see a lot of fake AI generated videos, especially right now. Like, and big accounts are sharing those pyramid videos. Like, did you see those one? It's obviously fake pyramid videos. Like they are like people
Yeah.
under the pyramid and everything. It looks so fake. It looks so AI generated, and big accounts are promoting it. They went inside. No, there is like of like use your head. Because of this misinformation, the real thing get diluted. We need to make sure that we condemn all these fake videos or fake newses.
Yeah, definitely, and that's something that we're gonna talk about, right? I mean, that will be one of the topics. We're gonna talk about pseudoscience or supposedly pseudoscience, grifters, fakers, forgeries, and
Misinformation.
also the real thing, right? Because we
Also those, Richard Dodys of this world who
yeah,
deliberately put fake false information in the scene so people get distracted. So we need to make sure that there is like a agency working for that, and it's like
so
it's not like a conspiracy theory, it's a proven fact. And
so
I'm giving you the name Richard Doty. Go look.
where do you want to go first, Sid? Do you want to first go to Jason Sands and sort
Yeah,
of
let's start
talk
with
about
Jason
this
Sands.
stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
go to Jason Sands.
And then after that, we'll return to the Khafre Pyramid, and we're gonna sort of look at that again. And because there's a lot of new stuff coming out and a lot
Yeah.
of discussion about it. So hang on, because that will be super interesting. I got some really cool stuff. So this is about Jason Sands lying, and I got this one from you. And I guess I'll play a little bit, and then you can sort of fill in.
No, we can play and stop. I'll rather
Okay.
hear from him.
Have you ever heard of an
than me.
underground base or been to an underground base? And he said, "Oh yeah, I've been in an underground base facility." And I'm like, "Wow, okay." The very first documentary I ever made was about Phil Schneider, about a guy who claimed he was in an underground base and he lost his fingers from getting into a battle with aliens.
Yeah.
Post documentary, the program coming out.
Unless he's like, I don't have enough weed.
Yeah. Jason Sands says in a space that he was sent in a crack squad unit to go into a cave, which is exactly what Phil Schneider said he was doing, going into a cave underground. And Jason says he was hired to whack 8-foot tall crab aliens.
Yeah, I believe he said this on Post Disclosure podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, December 18th. Yeah.
So I'm like, that's Phil Schneider.
Yeah.
Right?
You're like, this whole time, especially because you're working on this Corey Good documentary in Gaia and seeing how he LARPed and pulled all these things together, this whole time you're like the Leo meme where you're like, wait a minute, I know that. That's it.
Right? But I'm people don't listen to me. I say this stuff like in spaces, and I'm doing like this weekly KGRA radio show.
KGRA.
Every Wednesday. It's just web radio.
Well, anyway, so this guy, the way I understand him, because I didn't see the whole thing, right? So I only saw what you sent me.
Yeah. I've watched the whole podcast. So anyway, continue.
Yeah. So the way I understand it is that this guy, Sands, he sort of was following all these different groups and panels, and he sort of took into account what everybody found very popular, and then he created this self-image of being that person connected to all these different things that people found interesting in order to get a following and boost his channel and himself and make money out of it.
Yeah. So what happened? Jamie Foxx, he was the one who introduced him. Jamie Foxx is like a OG documentary maker of UFOs. He's like a big name in UFO world. So he got reference of Jason Sands from very known people like Christopher Mellon and I think the Michael guy as well. I don't remember the guys, but like very credible sources referred Jason Sands to him. So he took that interview. In that interview, he did not mention about the crab aliens or anything. He just gave the basic story, which was 1992 sighting of a UFO.
Yeah.
And in that UFO, he said next day they showed, because he used to work in army base, and his story was he was going into that base, and then on the gate entry they showed him the video and asked him, did you notice anything, did you see anything like that? He said no. But then they moved forward in the base. It was in Nevada, so it's a long drive, right? And during that, a blue alien came to him and asked for a metal or titanium or something. And he said, I don't know. And he said while he was talking to them, everyone in his car was frozen. Like they were like in a trance. And he was the only one who witnessed that. Anyway, Jamie Foxx accepted that. He said, okay, it is possible and this could happen. After that, he went to another podcast and he said he was a hired killer from a US government who was sent to an alien base in the mountains where he killed a crab alien. It's not exactly how it is, but I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, you're paraphrasing. Yeah.
Basically, the point was he went there to kill that. And this is when Jamie Foxx decided, like, this is totally bullshit. That's never happened. And like, you have no proof. And you're saying that my name is on the line. So in this same podcast, he brought Jamie Foxx and Jason Sands in the same podcast. And this is where there's a whole scandal that I don't want to be a part of it and everything. If you want to say that, I have nothing to do with you. So this is the whole story. But the crab alien thing is one thing, but the other problem was the Corey Good story. Do you know Corey Good? So I'll tell you. Okay. So back in 2015-16, I was very much into those stuff. So you probably heard of the guy. He was on Gaia TV, Ancient Alien, David Wilcock.
Yeah.
David Wilcock I really like him. I know he's bullshitting. Like everything he's saying is not true, but I still like him because the way he communicates, I really like that. So he introduced this guy, Corey Good, who said there was a secret United States military program where they were recruiting kids
Yeah.
who was being sent to another planet to do their things.
Yeah.
And after that, they return. They spend 80, 90 years over there, but
Mhm.
because of some technology they don't age. They return and their mind is wiped out, and then he now remembering all that stuff, and he will always start with, in the name of Jesus I do that, and to bring the credibility, by Jesus I'm telling the truth and everything. Anyway, he fooled people, took a lot of donations and whatever. He made a lot of money out of it.
Mhm.
After a year or two, some people filed cases on him, and then he was in a deposition where he was under oath, and
Yeah.
he said it was all the creation of mine. It was my I IP rights, and they were never happened. They never happened.
Yeah.
It was my spiritual journey, and along those lines.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the attorney asked, like, did that really happen, or you made that up? So he said, no, it never happened. It's just it happened in my mind.
Yeah.
So that
It's sort of the delusion, right? The
yeah,
delusion.
delusion, yeah.
Yeah.
But he was not delusional. He was
Because he was
misusing
claiming that it was like in a meditative state and that he
yeah,
was actually there but not there, and sort of ringing.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So basically, it turned out to be the false story, and to be honest, it was false from the beginning, because like you can't go on another planet, live 80 years. We don't know any technology like that, like how you do it, and then why him? And he doesn't look like a super soldier, because he
No.
claimed that he was a super soldier. Yeah, he was a strong guy. He could be normal military, but not a super soldier.
And do you know, because I'm not that familiar with it, but did he make money out of it, or
A lot of money,
yeah,
a
a
lot
lot of
of money.
money.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I think he because someone else is what happened, someone else started to use that same program, and he said, I'm also a recruiter. So that's where the problem happened, and he said, this is my creation, that I have the IP rights, no one else can use it. So there's like a whole scandal around it.
And then, of course, Philip Schneider, that story, we haven't talked about it yet, and we will in a future
Yeah.
episode, because that one is actually pretty interesting and quite intense, actually, when you hear his
Yeah.
testimony. And he
Yeah.
also died under very mysterious circumstances. It's
Yeah.
a pretty
But
wild story.
how it tied to Jason Sands, that he was Jason Sands, which was using 20andMe, that program which was Corey Good promoting.
Yeah.
And because of that, everybody who knows Corey Good story knows that Jason Sand is lying, because it's a objectively proven truth under oath, that
Yeah.
like it was a lie, right?
Yeah.
So now Jason Said is also going on that direction, and he's killing crab aliens. So there are a lot of the things which make sense that he is making things up. A lot of the people who are still Jason Sands fan or believe in that shit, they're gonna disagree, but
Oh, so he
you can
still has
disagree.
supporters.
Yeah, but the problem is, this guy Jason Sand end up in a Joe Rogan podcast, and he went there, he lied a lot of the things. So this is why we need to do more scrutiny of the whistleblower. I really,
Yeah.
and that doesn't mean that Jake Barber or other guys are wrong. No, they are legit. It's just that Jason Sand is lying too much, which is, if you are in, and if you're like critical and in this UFO world for 10 years, you know what
Yeah.
is true, what is not, because a lot of the things have turned out to be false, including all the Gaia TV stuff.
True. Yeah, you got a lot of bullshitters and people pretending to be someone or something they're not. But like you say with Jake Barber, right? He has been validated and verified by multiple sources who also claim to, who are also who they say they are. Like, I think one of the persons who's sort of backing Jake is someone who basically was. The boss or overseeing the U.S. nuclear arsenal, right? At some point,
Yeah.
and some some Green Berets and Delta Force people also sort of back up his claims. So you can do sort of your own research and check out if somebody is who he says he is. But sometimes it's very difficult, like in this case.
Yeah, but Jason Sen was not lying that he did not. He did work in the base.
Yeah.
It's a fact. But then everything else, like, okay, I'm not saying that's not true. It could be. Maybe we all are wrong. But the chances of that being true is like
Yeah, but take for
1%.
example, the Phil Snyder thing it's very, it's very difficult to actually sort of know if Phil Schneider, was he having like a mental breakdown? Was he psychotic?
Yeah.
Did everything that he said happen? Right? It's a very extreme story, and you basically only have one source. Yeah, basically, really one source, his word, right? So it's
Also, Jason Sand had a very tough childhood. Even in the first podcast he did, he went there for hours, like how bad his childhood was.
Mhm.
His father was abusive, like he had problems, and then he figured it out, but then it wasn't bit. So there could be a trauma
Yeah.
that is creating him, like making him do this stuff where he actually believed it. Because when I was listening to Jason Sen, not the original, like the shooting one where he was killing for US government, but the other podcast,
Yeah.
uh, he looked very genuine, without a doubt. And I still
Yeah.
think there is some truth to it, but
Yeah.
then there could be a lot of like like your mind can create your illusions.
Yeah, and I
actually
think
believe
if
those
you
things.
if you get very popular and you get a following,
Yeah,
and you sort of notice that people want to believe, and you can tell them whatever you want, and they'll
yeah,
believe it because they started believing you, and you can make money out of it, right? Then
yeah,
you have to be what you call it. You
yeah.
have to,
I don't think Jason Sen made a lot of money out of it, so I won't say that money was primary. Yeah, in case of Corey Good, he took a lot of money from people. He was in the conferences and doing that, so a lot of people were giving him money. So that was a different story. That was an obvious scam. This guy was not scamming, and it looks like he believed what he's saying, but what he believed is not true.
Okay, but we're going to the next topic because
Okay.
we got a lot of ground to cover. So, talking about incredible stuff that might or might not be true, we're going to this
I
story Project Sunstreak, the CIA's attempt to locate the Ark of the Covenant in 1988. Now, this is, people might think it's insane, and it probably is, but it is a real document.
It's not
Um,
insane.
and it probably really happened, and we're gonna dive into it a little bit. So here's the document from the CIA that has been declassified. You can go through it. It's very interesting. And what I actually want to show is the one that you sent me, because that's sort of a nice breakdown of what happened.
So we are talking about Ark of the Covenant, right?
Yeah,
So while you oh, okay, let's play.
I got it. So this guy does a nice breakdown of sort of the document.
Target is a container. This container has another container inside of it. The target is fashioned of wood, gold, and silver. The target is similar in shape to a coffin and is decorated with seraphim. Wow, dropping seraphim bombs. If you don't know, seraphim are basically the angels of the Old Testament. And the fact he says seraphim is such an exact thing, because the way remote viewing works is you don't always see things. They call it remote viewing, but it's really remote sensing. You just get a lot of information. Some of it comes in visuals, but a lot of it just comes in a knowing, what we call downloads now. You just get this knowing. You're tapping in to this information field. So the fact he says seraphim is so profound. He goes on to actually draw the seraphim, which kind of looks like a phoenix as well. And you see this symbology in
And then here, I think, yeah, somewhere around here.
a certain time. And if you try to open it prematurely, you are destroyed by the internal protection system, or I guess the entities protecting it. It seems like it protects itself, and there's entities protecting it as well, and you are destroyed if you try to open it. He goes on to describe the locking mechanism, some more descriptive words like spirits pop off the page there. and then
Right,
goes
this is-
into detail about what happens if you're one of the unlucky ones who try to pry it open prematurely without authorization. Destroyed, pain, anguish, terror, horror, quick death, scorched, burnt, power, forbidden, protected. Yeah, no, stay away from this thing. So just to recap real quick, somewhere in the Middle East, we come to find out later that they think it's in Ethiopia. The Ark of Covenant is underground somewhere, in a room that's guarded by spirits with mummies around the wall, and there's seraphim on the Ark of Covenant itself, and that there's a locking mechanism, which is pretty simple, but it can only be opened by particular people at a particular time, and if you try to open it prematurely, you are destroyed. Now, the official CIA write-up at the end says viewer 032 attained excellent site contact. So that's their stamp of approval and endorsement, saying that this remote viewer did a great job in describing the blind target, which come to find out is the Ark of freaking Covenant, which they now believe is in Ethiopia.
Yeah. So okay. Well, first, what do you make of this?
No, Ark of the Covenant being in Ethiopia is like very common knowledge. It's not 100%, but it's like most likely there because like Graham Hancock did amazing documentary about it.
It
If
was
no,
like his first case, right? But because before Hancock was like a regular BBC journalist, like a
Yeah.
respected journalist, and he still calls himself a journalist, not an archaeologist. And that was sort of the first big story that sort of got him on the 30 years
Yeah.
expedition, doing the research that he does. And he, of course, he lost everything, his reputation, his career, his job, friends, etc.
And then those Ethiopians actually believe that thing, that it is there. And then the mystery around the temple where they have this Ark of the Covenant is weird that people have to be, they go young and they die in 2 years for some reason. There's like radiation poisoning and stuff. So there is, if it's not Ark of the Covenant, it is something over there.
Yeah, and of course Ethiopia is also very interesting, right? It has a very rich and long history, especially sort of the Empire of Axum, which
Yeah.
turned to Christianity in the 4th century. So there is actually quite a good case to be made that if there is something like the Ark of the Covenant, that it might actually be located in Ethiopia.
Yeah. You know, one thing I want to tell from Islamic point of view, you
Yeah.
are not allowed to attack Ethiopia.
No?
There's one country in the world you're like, unless they attack on you, you're not allowed to fight Ethiopians, and
Okay.
you're not allowed to invade Ethiopia. There is a different reason that they give them. Like back in the day, they were looking for refuge, so they gave them
Yeah.
refuge.
To Muslims.
But whatever the reason is, like Ark of the Covenant is there, and the Muslims are not allowed to attack Ethiopia.
Yeah. But you did have sort of because during one of the conversations, actually the conversation that we're going to talk about the pyramid of Khafre, and they in that sort of discussion they also sort of talk about the covenant, right? The Ark of the Covenant, and do you believe it's real? And then everybody said no. But somebody said, I forgot his name. He said, well, if there was an Ark of the Covenant, there would be a major war in Ethiopia, and the U.S. government would swoop in and get that Ark right away. But I think that sort of argument that he put out there is nonsense.
It's nonsense, yeah.
Because Ethiopia has been plagued by war since the early 90s, right? And especially the 2000s. It was like in a continuous civil strife war scenario. So if you want to scoop up something, those were the perfect conditions.
We also live in the world of law.
Yeah.
There is no law. Like US have to follow international law. They cannot just go in there Ethiopia and take something which is very sacred to them. Also, there is like a huge chunk of Christians who will fight against that. Like US cannot do that. So
No, but I mean,
the only thing they can do like sneaky stuff. They go, they steal it, and they replace it with the fake thing. But yeah, it's not that easy as it looks like. And fighting Ethiopia, you need to have a reason to go to war. So
Yeah, but I mean, there was continuous war in Ethiopia. Like, I
exactly.
mean, the land is completely. You know, the movie Black Hawk Down is in Mogadishu, right? You know,
No,
it
no,
was.
war is there, but what I'm saying,
Yeah.
like direct U.S. war for
Yeah,
U.S.
okay,
to,
but I
yeah,
mean, you can easily swoop in like a Delta team or a SWAT, some kind of
exactly.
special forces team that sort of scoops up something like that. The only thing that might hold them back is exactly what the remote viewer said, that it's protected, and that it can only be unlocked and opened by
Yeah.
somebody at a particular time. So maybe you can't steal it, right? So
Also, if it's like a real Ark of the Covenant, U.S. government is not stupid, and they're uh, very much into that religious stuff. U.S. government, like
yeah,
CIA, have gone through every route of spirituality. So if it's a real relic from the god, they're not gonna piss God by just stealing it, because historically, anyone who tried to do it end up in a big mess. That one time they
yeah.
stole it from uh, the Jews back in the time of Moses, after Moses or something, and they had to return it because it was nightmarish for them. Like the
Now we all know the Indiana Jones movie, like the Ark of
oh,
the
it's a
Covenant.
beautiful, one of my favorite movie. But what I'm just saying that they cannot just go and steal it. Maybe they are waiting for some good reason. Also, it's not 100% confirmed. This is
Yeah, it's just
most
one remote
likely,
viewer,
yeah.
right?
So
Yeah.
yeah, not remote viewer, because Graham Hancock's story is other than remote viewer, right? And then there are many other reasons.
Yeah.
So it
So
is the most likely location, but it's not confirmed. So they're not gonna play with God. So they
yeah, and
will
then
wait for the right moment.
do you actually know when Graham sort of went on his when he started doing the Ark of the Covenant thing? Was that also in the because
I think it was late 90s or early 2000s.
okay, so that's
This is,
after the remote viewing happened.
yeah,
So okay, that's
but
interesting.
he did not use remote viewer. He
No, no, no,
used,
no.
yeah, like his methodology was like uh, the son of Bathsheba, who,
Yeah,
Bathsheba, yeah,
yeah.
Bathsheba,
I think there's
Queen of Sheba had enough. Like she went to see Solomon, and they had a kid, and then Solomon gave that Ark of the Covenant to his kid. So, or they stole it. There's like a whole narrative around it.
and I think Jesse Mitchells did a really nice interview with Graham where they sort of go into sort of this backstory of how Graham got started. But
By the
so
way, that's not the only location. There is another location which is
yeah,
underneath the Temple Mount.
hmm,
So
yeah,
Ethiopia is not the only location. There are like two locations which there is three actually. One is under the Red Sea or Dead Sea or somewhere.
yeah.
Uh,
And the idea with this one is that the Crusaders
Yeah,
or the Knight Templars that they took
yeah.
the covenant and took it
But
to
the two
Ethiopia.
most likely number one is Ethiopia. Number two is it's underneath the. They are saying there is a secret chamber
Yeah,
underneath uh, the Temple Mount,
yeah.
and it is hidden there. That's why everybody is fighting around that area. And despite international ruling, Israel is drilling secretly
Mhm.
underneath to go to that point. But
Okay.
there is like a whole story around it.
But I do want to point out because Ethiopia right now doesn't have a really good reputation, but it used to be a very powerful force and respected because in ancient times it was sort of equated to Rome, Persia, China, and Ethiopia was in that lineup of world
Ethiopia
powers,
was
right?
a great country.
Yeah, so it's not
Historically,
like
yeah.
it's not impossible that they would take it there, right? I mean,
And they
they're
were wise kings.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, let's go to the main topic. So the because that I got so many movies and clips and stuff, and we haven't even started yet. Okay, let's first go over the claim. So you got the SAR scanning of the pyramids, and then they discovered those 2 kilometers drill, sort of holes underneath or pillars underneath the pyramids. And then people said like, oh, you can't use that technology to do that, and it works this way and it doesn't work that way, and they're full of it. And this is a really nice breakdown of the technology that they use, and he from Jay Anderson, and he also sort of goes into the criticisms. It's a couple of minutes, but it's worth watching. So let's go.
A lot of critiques, and I mean a lot of critiques, including coming from the mainstream media and the mainstream academic sector, about direct EM penetration and ground penetrating radar, how there is no ground penetrating radar that can go 2 kilometers into the rock. And that's absolutely right. But that's not what's being claimed by the team. The team is not claiming the SAR technology, which stands for synthetic aperture radar. They're not claiming that SAR is penetrating 2 kilometers of rock. Instead, their method proposes that SAR technology is detecting secondary surface deformations caused by deep mechanical resonance, not direct EM wave reflections, right? So they're picking up on resonances coming from underground structures and measuring that acoustic resonance, that reverberation. It's not penetrating deep into the ground. It's penetrating quite shallow into the ground, which is typical for these systems, picks up on acoustic and reverberatory energy and uses that to model what could be underneath the ground, causing these reverberations. SAR technology already measures surface deformations within millimeter scale precision using interferometric techniques, also known as INSAR. That's how we monitor earthquake zones and volcanic inflation. If there were deep voids beneath the Giza Plateau, which are resonating, the surface could experience these subtle periodic displacements, like detectable energy that would be picked up through the SAR technology. Through the phase-sensitive Doppler processing. So SAR doesn't actually need to penetrate the rock directly, it just needs to detect surface effects caused by subsurface resonance, right? So anything that's below ground, that's a large structure, especially, and we're going to get into the reasons why the Giza Plateau might be one of the most interesting places in the entire world to find this type of anomalies and structures. So when they're picking up on these reverberations, it's being caused by structures below ground that are transmitting this reverberatory energy up to the surface. The satellite scans the surface, not the depth, and picks up on the reverberation, which it's able to model. It's able to figure out through very, complex computational algorithms, the model of what exactly is reverberating under the ground.
Yeah, I'm gonna do YouTube without commercials. Oh my god, it's driving me nuts. Anyway, that's a sort of nice, concise way to sort of explain. He actually goes on a little bit further to explain why
I think
the
that's a good
plateau is
summary.
so.
I think it's
But
a good summary for a layman that it is not going deep underneath 2 kilometers. That's very understandable. And they're doing this like surface level vibration detection, which is giving that image that there are hollow structures beneath.
and then they
Pyramid.
use AI to model those structures, and then
Yeah,
you get those 3D pictures, and then you can of course look it from
yeah,
the side or from the bottom or whatever
yeah,
angle you want, because the AI interprets the data and visualizes the data.
exactly. And now we go to the debate.
Yeah. Now,
Why? Yeah,
yeah. So afterwards, there was this, I think, a really nice panel by Piers Morgan that he put
very
together
good
with,
panel.
yeah,
Yeah,
and Jay Anderson starts the conversation, and he sort of tells us what he just told us now, and some other stuff, the stuff that he's working on, and his own interpretation of the data. But afterwards, you get the panel, and yeah, we're gonna play some clips from it. So let's start with the biggest critic.
Into many of these points, which
Oh.
is rather interesting because I'm actually a proponent.
Wait, it's
you're talking of Flint
yeah. I think I had to put it right.
because this is not
Yeah,
Flint.
okay. Here's Flint.
kind of stuff to be true, but it is total bullshit. It is absolute and utter bullshit for so many different reasons. Number one, they're using a method that has never been presented before in depth. It's never been tested. Number two, it follows all the rules of pseudoscience where you present things to the public, a public that is not informed on the actual evidence that we have, instead of, and it doesn't address the evidence that we actually have. So it doesn't actually show up all the evidence we have for the bedrock at Giza or for the water table at Giza. There have been ground penetrating radar, there's been muon studies, there's been electroresistivity tomography, there have been deep soundings, drillings, seismicity studies on the Giza Plateau. We actually understand the bedrock and the hydrology there quite well. And in fact, the depth of the water table is dozens of meters. So anything they have found would actually have been completely submerged underwater at any time in the past. And so this is the problem. What they're doing is they're just starting off with grand claims from unproven technology, and they're not addressing how it integrates with all the evidence over 100 years of research on the Giza Plateau itself. And so it's just absolutely hallmark pseudoscience. And they're already saying we can't publish this stuff in peer-reviewed journals, but these are scientists with PhDs who have published in peer-reviewed journals. And so they're just claiming to be canceled without even trying to publish this stuff for an educated audience of professionals that actually knows the evidence.
Okay, well, that's a pretty emphatic.
Okay, so that is I did find this rebuttal pretty powerful, right? Because I wasn't aware.
Some of that I actually agree. But for example, I don't agree with the word pseudoscience. It's not pseudoscience, it's a new technology. Yes, it's unproven because it's a new technology they are using, but they're not like creating a new technology from scratch. They are modifying SAR technology, which has been proven. So it's just a new technique using SAR.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things is, right, if this is complete fabrication and if they, if there's nothing to these claims at all, right, why would two companies, tie their names to this study, right? I find that also very curious because you see very prominently the logos of the companies involved with the study.
Yeah, also even Zai is not rejecting it. He's not endorsing it, but he's not rejecting it. And he's like the biggest Egyptologist in the world. Like he's in charge of Giza pyramid.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about that story? Because you were the one who sort of highlighted that.
No, so Zai has been the enemy of Graham Hancock since the beginning. Because, and
that's
then
what I can remember.
Yeah, but now they actually opened up arms to each other. Now they are talking, and Zaya is a little bit softer, and he's accepting what Graham Hancock is saying.
Yeah, because this quote, there are tunnels under the Sphinx and around the pyramids, which will prove to carry many secrets of the building of the pyramids, is from Sahih Hawass.
Yeah.
In 1996.
He did that. That's why he actually knew that there are some tunnels down there, and that's why when this technology came out recently with the SAR, he's not absolutely rejecting it because he have this idea. However, he's the guardian of that archaeologist, or Egyptologist, where he have a mainstream narrative, and he is protecting that narrative.
And somebody pointed out that he also went into prison for quite a bit, and then he changed his mind after he got out of prison.
Yeah, because he went to prison for like political reason in Egypt.
Yeah.
Not for his
Egyptology. Yeah, but they might. Yeah, you don't know how these things go. So,
but
anyway.
But what happened when something happened to you where you are trying to tell the government that or authority that okay, you are putting me in prison for no reason, you're not even listening to me? That's what happened to him. And then they put him in jail, and then he came out and he realized he was doing that to Graham Hancock and other people because he was not even giving them chance to listen to them. So now I think also with age people get softer too.
That's
a lot of
maybe he has nothing to lose anymore, right? I mean, that's the other reason with age that you see many people coming out.
There is also a possibility that pyramids are losing interest among people. So if they find something new, that will be good for Egyptologists, because Egyptology was dying, to be honest, because they declared this bullshit that there's a pyramid, nobody interests. But if they find that it is a technology, some kind of power generation, whatever the technology is, then every eye will be on the pyramids again.
So this is another thing that he pointed out, which I actually do agree with. This also from Dr. Flint?
These kinds of investigations. But what we're talking about here is testing 2 kilometers underground on a sensitive archaeological site to test a method that can be tested elsewhere. In archaeology, what we do, one of my catchphrases when I go to the public is we always work from the known to the unknown. So if you're going to present a new method, what you can first do is test it on known features. So for example, at the site of Ostia, the port at Rome, that has been investigated intensively by Simon Kie and other scholars, Sarah Parkak. I just interviewed her for my YouTube.
Anyway, so that was basically his main point, because some people say like maybe you could just drill a hole in the plateau and check it out. Actually, that is my position. I think they should.
No. I 100% agree with Flint that instead of drilling first, you need to test it in another site.
Yeah,
that will prove the power. No, I'm just saying that will
okay,
prove
but I want
technology
to
is real.
rebuttal.
Okay,
but
let's
go on.
rebuttal. Yeah, go ahead. Rebuttal.
Okay, so when you sort of listen to what Jay Anderson said at the beginning, and then we got the commercial, but after the commercial, he would say something else, like that the Giza plateau, as it is structured, and the material that's used, the quartz and the limestone, it is sort of the perfect setting to test this particular technology, because of it will amplify the reverberations, which you might not be able to do that on other places, because you might not have those tunnels, and you might not have the plateau. And
what Flint said over there is another site they found where they can test this technology. It won't cost anything because the site has been already excavated and already proven.
I know, but
so
I mean,
it's not about like I'm not saying
but I mean,
don't do anything. I'm just saying,
I know, but
at least show the world that this technology, this method is working. So prove that by doing that over there. That way, you have one proof that technology is working. Whatever the result is, and then after go.
But it might not work there. So my point is, it might not work there because it does not have these ideal setup like the Giza plateau has.
Okay, if it doesn't work there, that's fine. But at least try it. That way, it will show that method exists. Maybe it's not working, but it won't cost them anything. Like it will cost them some money, but not that much than drilling a hole underneath that. And I'm not saying that don't do that. I'm just saying, there is Earth is really big. Find another spot. Try to show the world that this technology they are using is working.
Okay.
Anyway, in terms of digging a hole.
But still, okay. But we'll go on. But the one thing that I will say for the whole is that these sort of claims and these sort of speculations about the pyramid, they have been for 40, 50 years, maybe longer, that that they're like power generators or that there's structures underneath. Like, why not just once and for all just drill one stupid hole and settle it once and for all, right? And then nobody can deny what they found.
Where are you going to dig the hole? Like, okay, for example, you dig a hole a little bit further from the pyramids, right?
Yeah.
You still, right? You did that. But at the end of the day, you're just drilling a hole in the land. The main thing is underneath the pyramid. You can't dig underneath.
You can do a diagonal, right?
What if it destroyed something? So they have to be very careful before drilling it. I'm just saying, the first try is non-invasive technology.
Yeah, non-invasive.
Yeah.
No.
Because this is very invasive. And
Okay.
I actually eventually want them to go and dig it anyway.
Yeah.
But at least know where they are digging. Right now, they don't even know what they have to dig. Because if something is a 2 kilometer underneath, you have to be sure what you're doing.
Okay, maybe you're right. I do understand what you're saying, and I think Flint made a good point. But we're gonna go on, and we're gonna also show that there are probably other ways to sort of show this is real or fake. I got some clips just around the corner. Let's first finish this one.
Okay.
So this one is I forgot his name, but the guy with the beard. he also
yeah.
made some really good points.
I do think the skepticism might be a little bit heavy, to be honest with you. They do say that they admit that they're using a novel software, and it's probably AI, like Milo was saying. So they're looking at this. From what I understand, they're scanning it multiple times. They're looking at the changes in the scan, and then using that with AI to model what would cause those changes. Now, it sounds a little crazy, and you look at the images, and you're like, well, maybe could be this, it could be that, but I have to point out that none of us here know how to really read those images. And if I showed a piece of sheet music on the table right here and said, what is this? If you don't read music, you just see lines and dots. But if you read music, you see Mozart. So I think that it might be a little bit over skeptical to just dismiss this out of hand. I would like to see them peer review the work. If they don't peer review it, that is a little bit of a red flag. But it's very common for people to release their stuff now. They release their pop culture version of it, get some funding, and then they push the peer review through. I mean, even the Cave of Bones stuff, that the Home of the Delhi stuff was done that way. We got the Netflix special before the peer reviewed papers, if I remember right.
So I like this one, and I also want to play this one right afterwards because it sort of ties into what he said earlier.
Are the ones lined up to buy it. If it's good, if it's interesting. Now, if it's just stratigraphy, you're gonna have to sell it to students. But if you're actually selling a product that's marketable, I'm at the front of the line. But you guys have alienated me. And if you look at the Society for American Archaeology, at their original bylaws, at their original constitution, they say two things about interested amateurs. One, they want to bring more into their fold. Two, they will only offer them help when asked. But they don't do that with us. If we say we're interested in something over here, we can expect these guys to come and poo-poo all over it. Look at this study right here. Like they're saying, well, we don't know for sure that it works. Okay, we don't know, but we do know that that type of telemetry has only been used for about 3 feet or 3 meters under sand for the most part. But in this, they do have images of the inside of the pyramid. We see the images of like the King's Chamber. So it works through limestone. It works through a lot further than it has in the past. So there is reason to think that maybe these guys have something going on here, but it's being poo-pooed out of hand because it's the pyramids and because it's got some goofy alien woo attached to it. There is definitely a knee-jerk reaction to these sorts of things in the alternate history community. Probably the Baghdad battery being the best example. Ask any archaeologist that digs into it and they will tell you, well, yeah, you could make electricity with those. Look online, you'll find even Milo's got one. There's thousands of guys debunking this.
I won't play it entirely, but that's sort of the Baghdad battery thing, that there were actually something like batteries found in Baghdad.
It's a proven fact that they were generating electricity. Even the biggest skeptics accepted that they generate. But the problem was like the difference was they were saying they were generating a very small amount of current, not like to power a bulb, but to give a static. But that's just a theory, right? But nobody can deny it. It's a scientific fact that it generates electricity. One thing I will say, if there are structures, instead of drilling hole, try to find a pathway. Maybe if somebody built those structure, first look for that pathway, because if there was a structure, there must have been a pathway.
True.
It must be secret. And they
but
have to...
one thing. Wait, you just said something which triggered me because I actually have it lined. Okay, so Brian Rumela, I think we talked about him before. I got him here. So he points out something which ties into what you just said. So he said, I will give you one shocking insight this AI made on its own. He said, so the AI came to the conclusion, I don't ask me how, the columns are not natural, and the best postulate is they were not built underground, but were once built on what was the surface of the earth, is what sort of the conclusion that the AI came to. So you can see in this sort of thread from Rumela how they sort of how the AI sort of got where it got through the interpretation of these images. It's a very interesting thread, by the way.
Yeah.
But so the AI postulates that they were actually on the surface of the earth.
There is
That's
so
right.
like yeah, but what I'm saying, if they built it, there must be a process to install them. They cannot build them underneath, right? They have to build them outside and then they have to install it underneath there. I
Yeah,
am pretty
and I
sure
do
they're.
have a hard time believing that these things were above ground. I mean, imagine
I don't believe that either. I
two
think they were
kilometers. My
built.
God,
I think they were
it's
built
crazy.
outside, but they were installed later underneath, because
Yeah,
I don't think Earth. There was like two. You can't find the surface 2 kilometer underneath,
yeah.
and it doesn't make
But
sense.
so we're now gonna so people have sort of now a better idea, sort of the criticisms and the pros and the cons. I think it also that Dan Richards also pointed out that that the technology was able to detect the chambers within the pyramids, which match the exact
Yeah,
place of those
yeah.
chambers.
That's how we
So,
found Queen's
so
chamber. Yeah.
yeah, so that's very interesting that they got that right of the pyramid. So why not the lower part, right? So anyway, but the point is, what Flynn said, like didn't even try to get it peer reviewed because they were already saying we're getting canceled before we even got canceled, right? They didn't even try. They already playing the victim, and basically when you sort of look at this panel discussion, the two people who sort of represented the mainstream, Flint and the other guy, Milo, I think his name is. They basically say, yeah, we're open to all of this, and we're trying to cope with all the information and social media and all these sort of amateur archaeologists, and we're trying to keep an open mind and look at these things and incorporate new findings and blah blah blah. But what Dan Richards also said at the end is like, that's what you say, but when you look in practice, it's not what you do. And I actually got a lot of examples
Yeah.
that showcase that they might say that they're open and interested, but when you sort of look at what they actually do and how they sort of treat these sites, it's anything but open. It's very ham-fisted denial and ridicule and accusations of pseudoscience, and we talked about Gunung Padang, and that's a very interesting site in Indonesia, in West Java, and it's dated at the moment. It's dated at 27,000 years ago, right? And it has different layers and strata, and it's clearly a sort of a pyramidal structure, artificially built with chambers inside, and they use different kind of technologies and some similar to map it out. And this is how they were treated. So let's play some clips from that one. I can highly recommend this documentary, by the way.
To understand the response to Hillman's paper, we need to look at some of the history of his work on this site. As I said in the introduction, this work began in October of 2011. It was stopped for the best part of a year during 2013 due to protests from archaeologists. You see, Hillman is a geologist, and I suppose that he was caught playing in somebody else's sandbox. But the archaeologists at the time said that they know the site is around 2,500 years old and that there is no reason for any further investigation. It wasn't until Danny Hillman took the then president of Indonesia, Bambang Yudhoyono, to the site in December of 2013 and explained his findings. And he made his recommendation that excavations get underway to further understand the site. President Yudhoyono gave Hillman his blessing to get underway with those excavations, which, as you might imagine in such a remote area, took several months of planning and preparation. Once he began work in the second half of 2014, there was an immediate outcry from the same archaeologists, as this article from the Jakarta Post on September 24th of 2014 reports. Quote, Bandung Archaeological Centre head Desrel Riva Shanti has taken issue with the excavation process being carried out in Gunung Padang megalithic site in the Cianjur Regency, West Java, adding the process had not followed standard methods that were usually applied in archaeological projects. I've yet to go to the site, but I can judge it from photographs. An archaeological excavation method shouldn't have been carried out in this way, Desrel said on Monday. End quote. She hadn't even visited the site, but was prepared to offer summary judgment about both its origins and Hillman's work from nothing more than photographs. Frankly, it's pretty shameful behaviour. But it worked, as President Yudhoyono, who granted Danny Hillman permission to dig, stepped down from his position the very next month in October of 2014, and his successor put a stop to Hillman's work at Gunung Padang. Those 3 years of work prior to October of 2014 are what this paper is based on. And the truth is, those who have been paying attention to these types of sites and claims have known about the results found here for many years now. Hell, I was talking about this in a video on my...
Okay, and then this is also very interesting because we just saw Flint, right? Flint in the panel.
Yeah.
And he studies seeds, right, in Greece. So sort of ancient Greece, and he's sort of a food archaeologist who specializes in ancient food and seeds and then focused on Greece. Doesn't mean he's stupid or that he doesn't know what he's talking about or doesn't understand archaeologists. That's not what I'm saying, but it's interesting that he shows up in these discussions. So I got this one.
One of the most quoted academic respondents to the Gunung Padang paper is Dr. Flint Dibble, an archaeologist at Cardiff University, whose profile there states that his research focuses on foodways in ancient Greece. Flint is quite active on Twitter. I think he even tagged me in one of his threads talking about this. And as some of you might know, he has stepped up and agreed to debate Graham Hancock on the Joe Rogan Experience. A daunting task, certainly, and something that Flint should be credited for, unlike certain of his other vocal on Twitter peers, one in particular, who, while willing to speak to the media, was not willing to debate Hancock, preferring instead to limit any engagement to Twitter's, at the time, 140-character post limit. This debate between Hancock and Dibble was originally supposed to have taken place late in 2023, but due to some health issues with Flint, was rescheduled till, I think, April of 24. I very much hope that the debate takes place, as I'll be watching with interest, and I sincerely wish Flint a speedy recovery. Dr. Dibble is quoted in articles responding to the Gunung Padang paper in Scientific American, The Guardian, and in the Daily Mail. He states that there's no evidence the buried layers were built by humans and that, quote, material rolling down a hill is going to, on average, orient itself, end quote. That statement might be true, but I'd love to see any other examples of material rolling downhill that somehow oriented itself into neatly ordered stacks of regularly cut and similar length columnar jointed rock with flat stones and 5 centimeters of mortar between them, effectively tightening the formation, as reported in the peer-reviewed paper. Nature really is mysterious and wondrous, I suppose. Perhaps Flint should consult with a geologist about how columnar andesitic rocks naturally form, or even read the part in the paper where Hillman provides exactly the evidence that he seems to be missing about the buried layers being man-made. My favourite quote from Dr. Dibble was a pretty typical strawman argument, the unfortunately very standard tactic of misrepresenting the evidence to create a point that is then easily dismissed. Quote, if you went to the Palace of Westminster and dropped a core 7 metres into the ground and pulled up a soil sample, you might date it as being 40,000 years old. But that does not mean the Palace of Westminster was built 40,000 years ago by ancient humans. It just means there's carbon down there that's 40,000 years old. End quote. This argument that all Hillman's team did was to date some really old dirt is repeated by several archaeologists, both in newsprints and in blogs. Noel Hidalgo Tan, an archaeologist at the Southeastern Regional Centre for Archaeology and Fine Arts in Bangkok, in a quote from the New York Times, said that, quote, it's just soil and not connected to construction activity, end quote. He also seemed to be taking a page from recent American political tactics when you just call anyone you don't like a Nazi, and told the New York Times that, quote, the pyramid narrative has some nationalistic edge to it and it's backed by a former president, end quote. In this case meaning Bambang Yudhoyono. John Hoops probably needs to give this guy a call for his next pseudo-archaeology hit piece in the Society of American Archaeology Journal. No charge for the tip.
So, and I want, so I've, you know, so it's pretty clear where this is going. And this are, you know, so they actually did a peer-reviewed paper. and they did the digging, and they came to really remarkable results. It's actually also in the first episode of Ancient Apocalypse from Graham Hancock that they talk about Gunung Padang. And I think you have to be completely blind not to see that it is like an artificial structure. And they actually they also dug up some really interesting artifacts. And I want to play a clip from that right now. Wait, that you can sort of see that it's not just baloney, but I recommend you watch the entire video.
At the site when the work was stopped and they were ran off. That was enough time for them to excavate a small amount and find many interesting stone artifacts, some which are quite strange, like this very dense, high metallic content triangular carved piece from stone that's not local to the area, and it's something that he talked about in an on-site interview with Andrew Collins. In a letter to Graham Hancock on October 2nd, 2014, he confirmed that the pyramid structure was now, quote, loud and clear and not difficult to understand for non-specialists if they come to the site to see it for themselves, end quote. He also reports finding some sort of open hall under 5 to 7 meters of soil, but had yet to get into the main chamber. This is exactly where work on the site stopped, and nothing has happened since. In his paper, Hillman makes mention that they were not allowed to move or drill through any of these stones on the terraces, which limited where he could sink his core drills and where they could dig trenches. Special permission was required to investigate further, and that permission was withheld. Now, when the...
Okay, anyway, so here you have like I think a very, very clear case that, you know, I think every normal person would want this excavated. I mean, when you watch the whole thing, there's so incredibly much evidence that it's man-made and artificial, and it's ancient. And you want to know what's in those chambers and those hallways that they, you know, scanned down below. And there's also, you know, a very clear sign that he was stopped, right? I mean, suddenly it was not allowed to drill anymore. Suddenly his backup disappeared. And also how the archaeological community reacted to his findings, even before they saw anything. And the ridiculous arguments that they come up with, right, to sort of to ridicule and slander him and his work. It's also, by the way, very reminiscent of how they deal with Graham Hancock, right? Because often they say about Graham Hancock that he's expounding or proposing racist, white nationalist theories, even though he's married to a black woman and he has 4 mixed children. And nowhere in sort of the ancient alien theory is white supremacy.
To be honest, first of all, I just want to say I'm done with this argument, white supremacy. I don't even care if somebody is white supremacist at this point. Yeah, I think it's people's right to be a supremacist. As long as they are not attacking others, inflicting pain on others, they can believe whatever they want. If they believe they are superior because of their skin, I don't consider them even enemy or anything. I just say, yeah, okay. As long as you're not hurting me, I'm fine with your beliefs.
Yeah, but
stop attacking people on their beliefs.
First of
all, he is not a white supremacist. Even if he was, I don't care. Yeah. I care what he's saying.
So this is, for example, a hit piece. First of all, they sort of, you know, just dismiss out of hand that it's all nonsense without really providing any evidence. And then, you know, they're making claims like the people behind this aren't scientists. One is a UFO researcher who believes aliens are interdimensional parasites that hijack human souls, and the other writes conspiracy books about the lost pre-dynastic Egyptian civilization, and recently promoted the so-called harmonic investigation of the Great Pyramid using technology he claims to have patented. Well, that last thing is basically very interesting because we saw in our last video that the University of Princeton actually put out a report, and I actually found another one which we'll dive into in a moment, which basically says the same thing, but the most sort of clear sort of slander and ridicule and sort of, personal attack is this one. These theories uphold white supremacy by pushing a false narrative of white superiority. No one questions how medieval European peasants living in the filth without basic sanitation built intricate cathedrals, but when Africans or Mesoamericans build pyramids, suddenly it must be aliens, right? I think, and claims of pseudo-archaeology, eugenics, and historical racism, and promoting the idea that African and Mesoamerican civilizations couldn't have built monumental structures like the pyramids without help of extraterrestrials. Like, this is complete garbage.
Yeah, because nobody says that anyway.
No, and these sites, they are also located in Europe, because they're also basically this sort of style of building.
Secondly,
it's Stonehenge, and all through Europe you have these
not just Europe, like whole world.
Russia, Asia.
Yeah, but one thing I want to say, like Graham Hancock's claim is not that alien built it. His claim is ancient civilization built it. He's not saying that, and he's not saying that people. He's saying that people in Egypt built it, but they were not built 4,000 years ago. They were built 20,000 years ago.
Yeah, and the only thing that he's doing, and he's doing it for 30 years, so it's not like a hobby or something. He's dedicated his life to it. And if it's just baloney and fabrication, like, why would somebody put 30 years of work and sacrifice everything, just to follow a red herring, right? So but the point is, he's taking the myths and the stories of these people seriously, right? So these are the myths and the stories that these people told themselves and each other about where these things came from. And often they say, like, we didn't make it, we didn't create these things. So who is the racist here? Somebody who takes their own story seriously and follows the evidence, and then apparently archaeological, geological, and astronomical data start supporting those myths and stories, debunking them, but actually supporting them as science progresses and our technology progresses. Or the people who say, oh, don't listen to these stupid
peasants
because they don't understand how everything works and they made up some stories.
Yeah.
Are those the people that are respecting these peoples and their cultures? And right?
Yeah, exactly. And first of all, there are no people who actually claims right now that they built the pyramids. They say someone else before them built it.
Yeah. That's what the Egyptians say themselves.
Egyptians are
right?
saying, yeah. I agree that they do not, like, there is a group that say that UFO built it, but majority of the reputable people, including Graham Hancock, says there was ancient civilization which was building those structures around the world.
Yeah, and that is, I think I'm gonna read that right now, because this Jay Anderson, follow him on Twitter because he's really good. He's also very level-headed and grounded and very smart. So he says, what about if there was a civilization that lived between 15,000 and 10,000 BC, like before the Younger Dryas, like before the Cataclysm? This period came right after the peak of the last ice age, when the Earth was starting to warm up. Ice sheets were melting, sea levels were still low, and huge areas of land were exposed, areas that are now underwater. This gave humanity a rare opportunity for several thousands of years. There was a relatively stable climate in certain regions, access to rich coastal areas now mostly submerged, a population of modern humans as intelligent as us, time potentially 7,000 plus years of development before a global catastrophe, the Younger Dryas, hits. And when you look at us, and he has a point here, we modern humans went from horses and carts to smartphones and supercomputers in about 200 years time, right? So you don't. So if you have 7,000 years, that's basically our official history is also that, where we are now is in about 5,000 years. We went from hunter-gatherers supposedly to where we are now. So imagine what an ancient culture could have done with thousands of years to develop, uninterrupted by war, pollution, or constant societal resets. It's not far-fetched to think that they might have mastered architecture, astronomy, and even forms of energy or science that we no longer recognize, especially if their knowledge wasn't digital, but oral, symbolic, and encoded in stone. Follow him.
Yeah.
because it's very interesting. But I also mentioned the Princeton University a paper that we mentioned last time, but now there's a new one, and I'll link both of them underneath the video. And this one is from University of California, UCLA, or UCLA, I should say. Connects consciousness, acoustics, and ancient architecture. Scientists led by Ian Cook examined the effects of tones between 19 hertz and 130 hertz on the human brain. Their findings were remarkable. At 110 hertz, the same frequency predominantly in ancient chambers activity in the left temporal region associated with language processing was significantly reduced. Remember with psionics, compared to other frequencies. Additionally, the pattern of prefrontal cortex activity shifted from left dominant analytical to right dominant emotional creative, specifically at 110 hertz. These findings align perfectly with what researchers discovered at the Hal Salvini Hypogeum clinical neurophysiology testing at the University of Trieste in Italy, revealed that exposure to the site's resonant frequencies could physically affect human brain activity. Volunteers with a frontal lobe prevalence during testing received ideas and thoughts similar to what happens during meditation, while with occipital lobe prevalence visualized images. So this is a super interesting study which sort of backs up the claims of psychoacoustics that Jay Anderson is putting forth. And yeah, we also talked about the Bosnian pyramids, right? So we don't even have to drill in Egypt because we got like even bigger and better pyramids in Bosnia that nobody knows about, except, you know, us. But I want to play this video because this is another instance of clearly obstructing archaeological digging and discovery by the mainstream archaeological society.
The whole pyramid and the tunnels have huge quantities of quartz crystal. And quartz crystal transforms one form of the energy into another one. Transforms, in this case, electromagnetic fields that are measurable, 28 kilohertz, through the piezoelectrical effect into ultrasound of 28 kilohertz. The frequency of 28 in ultrasound is the levitation frequency. People feel light. So these are huge structures with the oldest and best quality concrete. Imagine that we are able and allowed to clear the forest and the soil above the concrete blocks. Unfortunately, after first 3 months of digging back in 2006, so April, May, June, in July of 2006, the State Commission for the National Monument claimed that this whole area be a protected area. Why? Because of the small, very modest fortress on the very top of the pyramid, which is 450 meters away from here. So that forgotten fortress they used to stop the digging. Why? Because before that they claimed there was no pyramid. And then once we started digging, we are finding proof that we were right. So instead of supporting us, helping the project, helping exposing the biggest pyramids in the world, they wanted to do everything to stop us. Sad.
This is one thing I don't understand. If they find pyramids, that's good for their country. It will increase tourism, bring more money for research and everything. I don't understand why the government is trying to stop it. But that's my initial thought.
Yeah, but I mean, Sid. So basically, this is exactly the same story that we just saw in Indonesia, right?
Yeah.
Why would you stop digging in Indonesia? This would also be like a national treasure of Indonesia, if they dig it out and they have like a 27,000-year-old pyramid that blows archaeological and history as we know it out of the water, right? The stories about human development and where we came. But I think that's sort of the point here. And other peoples have also pointed out that there is this campaign that started, it's unclear exactly when it started, but, they started to sanitize and censor archaeology. And at the same time, I mean, you also have this one, and we talked about it before. Wait, I'm gonna pick it up here somewhere.
Because two things is there, like, what's the motivation and who is? Because it's not a national thing; it's international thing.
Yeah, international. Yeah, it's clearly
There is like international organization which is forcing government to stop those excavations.
So this is Gilgamesh, right? And they found they found the grave, or they claimed they found the grave of Gilgamesh, the god king of Uruk in Iraq, and supposedly he reigned for 126 years. That's sort of the official. So his tomb was said to have been discovered. Then the Iraq war happened, and the US established a military base right at that site. And from then it went dark.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's where they took the tab. Like, you remember back in the day when you were not believing in portal technology, I was saying.
You convinced me.
Yeah. So the US government took all those tablets out. And I think one of the main reason for Iraq war was to get the hold of those tablets.
I think you're absolutely right. And, just to sort of show how crazy, cover-ups can get, I want to play this clip because this, when I first heard it, this absolutely blew my mind. But this is from Mark Andreessen. And actually, I was the one who sent this one to Ashton Forbes. And I think Ashton Forbes was very happy when I did it.
We argued in our meeting with the White House on AI policy was, look, there are going to be issues that come from AI, but they should be regulated. The regulation should happen at the application level, not at the technology level.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is basically because, like, to regulate math, right, at the level of the algorithms, like to regulate.
And he argued with me when I said that.
Well, yes. So Ben basically said, look, it doesn't make sense because to regulate AI at the technology level, you're regulating math, and of course we're not going to do that. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And you'll recall that what they said was, no, actually,
we can classify math.
We can classify math, and literally, this is verbatim. We classified whole entire areas of physics in the nuclear era, and made them state secrets, like of the like theoretical
physics,
science of physics. We classified them and made them state secrets, and that research vanished. And we are absolutely capable of doing that again for AI. We will classify any area of math that we think is leading in a bad direction. And
so this is completely insane. But so and they're talking about 0-point energy and anti-gravity and energy, the stuff that Stephen Greer is talking about, right? Because that is sort of that fits exactly sort of the thing that they're talking about. They're not mentioning it explicitly, but sort of the physics that they're talking about, that's that. And I actually have another clip where you can also see how sort of this because it's it has nefarious reasons, right? Clearly it has implications, and it could shake up the world, and you can abuse power and all that kind of stuff. But there's also psychological reasons, right? Sort of human reasons why it happens. People lose their careers, their reputations is on the line. Their job is on the line. It's very difficult to believe something that runs counter to your education and your upbringing. And I want to play this one, which goes into that. It's from Kevin Knuth, and he's a really smart and intelligent physicist, and I think a really nice guy too.
Question, why do academics easily dismiss this? They easily dismiss any new theory or new idea or data that's anomalous. And that's because there's this general kind of an undercurrent that, I would call scientism, and others have called scientism, which is a belief that science can explain everything and that we know enough now to explain everything. And so if something appears or happens that's unexplainable, the assumption is that, well, clearly the data has to be wrong because we should be able to explain this. And that's generally the thought, that there's nothing new to learn about, right, is what we think. And in fact, scientists in the 1800s even said that. The late 1800s were quoted as saying things like, we've basically learned everything now, right? And then what happens? We discover relativity and quantum mechanics and the whole world changes, right? But nobody learns the lesson from that. We always think that we know everything. And that very well could be because of how physics especially is taught. Physics, it's presented to students as if, we know this, we know this, we know this, we know this. And physicists are some of the most egotistical people I know. And they do honestly believe they know everything, which is a problem when you actually don't, right? And it's hard to discover new things when you believe you know everything already. And it's kind of foolish to think that we do know everything at this point, because we clearly know that there is no quantum theory of gravity. So we cannot get quantum mechanics and gravity to get along. So clearly we're missing something, and it's big. I mean, that's a big deal.
So I'm gonna stop it there. But Kevin Knuth is super smart and very open-minded, and he has done also a brilliant presentation on the physics of UAPs or UFOs for the Sol Foundation, which I'll link it down below this video, which you should definitely watch. We'll probably play something in the future of that one. But this interview is also worth watching, and I really like this segment where he sort of goes basically into the psychology, some of the psychological reasons why physicists in this case, but academics in general, are sort of locked into their thinking and become very obstinate and dogmatic in their positions, and I think this what he says here is like a perfect illustration of how that might work, right? You sort of you are taught to know everything in a way that you also think that you know everything, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I actually have another clip which I also want to play, and it ties into the UAPs and actually a recent discovery on Mars that we almost forgot about. So I'm going to play this one. This is from News Nation, so I'll make it short. It's from Ross Coulthard, a Q&A session.
I do believe that NASA is on occasion suppressing photographs, because I've seen it for myself. I've told this story before, but I might as well tell it again. I was at the Marshall Space Center in Huntsville, and that was in May last year when I was giving my address in Huntsville to the Scientific Coalition for the Study of UAPs. And I was being given a VIP tour around the Space Center by a very senior person in the Space Center. And while we were in the main control room with big console TVs showing the feed back from the space station, I noticed probably, 8 to a dozen egg-shaped, tic-tac-shaped objects moving left across screen from the right. And they were coming from behind the space station, looking out towards outer space. And as we were watching, I said to the director of the Space Center who was showing us around, I said, look, is that Starlink satellites? Is there some Starlink launch that's just happened? And he looked and he went, no. Then he looked across to the console chief and she turned a switch, and all of a sudden the feed came up saying, transmission to the space station has been temporarily interrupted. Now, I wouldn't have believed that unless I'd seen it. And I never got an adequate explanation for what I and 2 other people with me saw that day. It did look like there were anomalous objects moving right to left across screen, looking out towards outer space from the space station. And
well, I really like this story. And he's a very credible witness, of course.
By the way, this happened a lot, like transmission suddenly turns off on NASA for some reason. And there is something going on. And
never a straight answer, right?
Yeah. Also, NASA have a history of fabrication.
And photo manipulation.
Yeah, total manipulation. That's why we have like flat earthers out there, because they don't believe NASA because of their fuckery. That's all.
Yeah, I know you can't blame them for being suspicious. I mean, that's the one thing that I sort of disagree with Ross Coulthard sometimes, is that he's very negative about people who believe in conspiracy theories, right?
Yeah.
Because then they say, like, how can we trust, I don't know, Jake Barber or, whoever, right? And then Ross Coulthard always says, like, yeah, but you were always asking for these people to step forward, and now they're stepping forward, and now you're saying, oh, I don't trust it, it's a fake, it's a psyop. And he has a point, but I actually think that the people who are so distrustful and that they see a conspiracy behind every stone and tree, that they also have a point, right? Because we have been lied to for 80 years. And if they cover up math or physics, as they claim, why wouldn't we be distrustful of these people stepping forward, saying and they claim that they're telling the truth, and maybe in their particular way they are, by leaving out stuff that they're not telling, or they're telling it in a particular way. So why would we trust Louis Elizondo or David Grush or Jake? I do actually trust these people.
I do too, but I think it's better to take their word with the grain of salt.
Yeah, and do your own research and check, double check and and compare it to other things. But I actually, so what Ross Coulthard was talking about. So basically, what I'm saying, I totally understand people who are hardcore skeptic and hardcore conspiracy minded, and that they say, like, they can step forward all they want and testify under oath all they want, but I'm not going to trust them, and it's another psyop, right? I think they have the right to, they have the absolute right to believe that. So this one is
oh yeah, and it's real, it's not fake.
Yeah. So this was actually what Ross Coulthard was talking about just before he mentioned the cover-up by NASA. It was because of this Tic Tac UFO that was seen on Mars, on NASA photos of Mars. You also see the shadow below it.
Yeah.
It's a clear shape. It's also gone on the next picture. So like the next years. So there's no photo manipulation. And sort of NASA also admitted, like, NASA is not denying the photo. It's actually in their archives, but they're saying, like, what were they saying? I think they were saying it was a stone or something.
Yeah, but it's floating.
Yeah, floating stone. Yeah, but this photo is sort of cleared up by using AI and Photoshop.
Yeah.
So some people say, okay, it is, it isn't that shiny if you look at the original picture, and then on the original picture it does look more like a stone. But a stone doesn't disappear in the next picture, right? So
yeah,
unless somebody kicks it, but then who the hell's kicking the stone?
Yeah,
and why does
ancient aliens?
Yeah. So this is another X-shaped UAP, the one that Jake Barber describes. Jake Barber actually describes two different UAPs, and they're conflated in the main interview, the News Nation interview, where you get a shorter version of Jake Barber's story. They conflate two different stories, one about the egg and another one about an octagonal shaped UAP craft.
Yeah.
The one that actually matches Michael Herrera's description. Only Michael Herrera's UAP is 600 feet. What was it, 600 or 300 feet? Insane.
Well, we will talk about the Michael Herrera thing in the whole next episode.
Yeah, so I prepared a whole rant about Tartaria, and
yeah, let's just end with that rant. I will
Okay.
say a few words about that too, but let's go.
So I'm not gonna say why I'm ranting about Tartaria, but somebody in my environment is, and I love the person. I want to, in case he sees this, it's not like a personal attack. I'm just, taking an issue with the whole Tartaria thing. So I did a thread on it to for my own psychological health. Okay, wait, I'm trying to find it here. Okay, so I had also a chat with Grok about it. That's the nice thing about Grok. Grok is not the final arbiter of truth, of course. No AI is. We are the arbiters of truth. But Grok can marshal a huge amount of information and access stuff that we don't even know exists, right? So the AIs are extremely useful tools in thinking and researching. So I asked Grok about Tartaria, and I'll go through some of these findings. One of the things is that the year without the summer is a really big thing about Tartaria, right? And often cited as a trigger. Now, it was caused by Mount Tambora's eruption in 1815, one of the biggest in history. We have the ash layer from that event in ice cores from Greenland to Antarctica, plus climate records showing cold, wet weather, but no mud. Tambora's fallout was ash, pumice. I think it's pumice, right? Not planet-wide mud tsunami. Localized floods happened, rains were, but they left normal river deposits and no mysterious, mud slide that supposedly happened from Moscow to Missouri. Actually, I go to some of these other things. I'll link the whole thread down below. And so Tartaria is, I think, very interesting because it's, in my view, it's sort of a combination of grifting, of people making money from other people by getting their attention and getting more views and followers and that kind of stuff, and but also I think a psyop, right, to distract people from the real issues, because some of the things that they're claiming I actually agree with, right? I do think that Nikola Tesla's research was suppressed, right? I think many people in the UAP community believe that Nikola Tesla's research was suppressed.
Not even in UAP community, everywhere.
Yeah, I think it's pretty common sense. And also, we just talked about these ancient structures having psychoacoustic effects and these energy lines and ley lines. And basically, you're talking about the ether, right, with the megahertz and all that kind of stuff, right? That there was this natural energy that you could tap into. That's also what Jay Anderson is talking about. So that's also sort of what Tartaria is about, but they take it to the next level. They're saying that there's electric vehicles flying around, right? I can show you, right? This is the example of, this is the proof. This is the so-called proof of Tartaria, right? Okay, so Tartaria, an erased civilization, it disappeared because of a huge mud slide. And Tartaria, in their belief, it sprawled. It was a sprawling empire which reached from Russia in the east to America in the west, with Europe and even parts of the Middle East being part of it. And they all had access to free energy, and they had I'm going to show it in a little bit, equipment that was all working on free energy. And then and Nikola Tesla, they celebrated Nikola Tesla, even though that he lived at the end of Tartaria, not at the beginning. So, they already had free energy long before, Nikola Tesla discovered it, supposedly. And then some group with apparently unlimited powers could summon up a gigantic mud flood from nowhere and destroy and cover up Tartaria. And then,
Where is that mud?
But they were really stupid because they left some buildings standing.
Yeah.
In certain locations, and that's sort of the only proof that they have that it happened. And then, but then when you sort of look at those places like Seattle and Chicago and Edinburgh, then it turns out that the reason that some of these structures are sort of buried have very sort of mundane, well-recorded reasons. Anyway, so I'm gonna show a clip. and for example, this one. Right, I mean, it's just
First of all, I want to say I hate it when they put cinematic music to fake videos to make them look legit. Like they look so fake. Don't do that. Anyway, let's
And
continue.
I mean, look at this picture. I mean, who, when you look at this, do you think, oh, I was mistaken, right? We had like, or do you think, I think this photo is doctored, right? I mean, who? Yeah, I just can't believe that somebody.
Also, you know what the stupid thing is? They don't claim it was an ancient civilization. They claim it was an 19th century. Dude, 19th century is not that far away. Everything was connected in 19th century. If anything existed like that, there would have been so much record of it. You cannot hide anything in 19th century.
Yeah, and yeah, because imagine like, so my father, but so my grandfather, his father, he would have probably lived through part of it, right?
Yeah.
So why didn't he say anything to us, right? Oh yeah, and we had like scooters that could drive with free energy, right? I think it would sort of stick with you if you've seen something like that. You know, you wouldn't hide it to your own children, like you were saying, like, oh, remember the time when we could sort of fly around to mega structures with zeppelins that, you know, tap into the ether and you know, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, but yeah.
Also, Tataria was a real place. It was like European used to call northern and central Asia Tataria. That was like, so when Mongols were attacking, actually it's a very old name too. When Mongols were attacking, they used to call them, okay, Tataris were attacking. So that area, northern and central Asia, is a known Tatarian place. And that was the Tatarian Empire. That's it. Nothing else. Nothing important.
Yeah, no, and that's the only legit part, right? They always show those maps, and those maps are real, right? That there was, like you said, there was the Europeans designated that area as Tataria, and that was sort of a loose name or label that they put on everything, like the Huns or the Mongols, or and
Exactly.
like the Muslims, they called all the Europeans Franks, right? Because they you know fought in France.
Also,
so
Muslims called all those Mongols Tataris.
Yeah.
Because when I read like Siege of Baghdad and all those things, where Mongols were attacking, they were saying, okay, Tataris have invaded Baghdad. And a lot of like, they were not calling them Mongols, they were calling them Tataris.
Yeah.
Especially even in India side, the Tatarians were attacking. So Tataria is a known place, but that was like central and northern Asia. It has also United States. How I don't even understand that they find the maps in Central Asia and then they say it's next to Chicago. There is
That's also, so the claim is that I don't really. So there was this guy, a Russian guy. I forgot the name of him, and he wrote in the 1990s. He wrote this book, the new something. The new I don't know, the new something. I'll link it down below. And he sort of made the claim when you sort of look at, he was a mathematician. He was, I think, quite brilliant, but he sort of made the claim that the whole of our history has been sort of manipulated and fabricated. And he gives all kinds of sort of evidence for that fakery. And most of it has actually been debunked, like because he claims that it has to do with the stars sitting in a particular place and sort of the things that some people are saying. So what he is claiming is that we're missing, or no, that we added another 1,000 years which didn't exist. So you got a group of people there, and the Tatarians are sort of, you know, a minor or sort of a group within a group, but there's this bigger group who says, like, if you look at, you know, the AD is after so from, if you sort of look at Christ and then you start the years and we're now at you know, in the 2000s, that basically there has been added another 1,000 years which didn't exist. And when you sort of look at the paintings in the Renaissance of Jesus, then, you know, he's portrayed as in a Renaissance way with cannons and stuff, and what they're saying is actually that is not, you know, the Renaissance, you know, importing the ideas of Jesus and giving them a Renaissance setting. That's actually real. Like, that's actually how Jesus lived. He lived in that period. Like, he didn't live like 1,000 years before. But
It is so bullshit because they don't realize they are not the only people in the world. There's like so many
yeah,
parallel civilization, like
yeah,
Chinese,
yeah,
Muslims and Christians have 1,000 year history of fighting. India has his
yeah,
own thing going on, 1,000 year
yeah,
history. They are just discarding everything based on this unprovable evidence,
yeah,
well, unprovable theory. So Muslims and Christians were fighting for 1,000 years. Then there is Ottoman Empire. There is like the whole
yeah.
Indian empires who were
But
fighting. There's like a known history
yeah,
recorded different places. The only 10 days are missing, and we know why, because of the Julian and the Gregorian calendar.
yeah,
And the
yeah.
days are not missing; they just change the time.
So the problem
Basically,
is, you got a lot of people right now who are sort of shaken up because, a lot of truths that they held dear and that they took for granted turn out to be not true, or they have been shaken to their core, right? Because of everything that happened with COVID, with 9/11. A lot of stuff has happened that has shaken people up, and also with the economy, and basically governments have been found out to be lying to their populations on like a gigantic scale.
yeah.
And we just went over cover-ups, right? I mean, we just showed you like real cover-ups, like in Gunung Padang, the Bosnian Pyramid. You could even say, like, what's now happening with Egyptian, the pyramids, right? I would really want to go to the bottom of that story, right? It's either real or it's not real, but don't leave us hanging. Like, don't ignore it and just move on again. But the point is, if you cover something up, you leave traces.
Yeah.
You always leave traces. If you don't leave traces, you must have superpowers, right? If you don't leave traces, you are already in total control. You must have absolute control of everything. If you can erase something that happened 200 years ago, if you can
Yeah.
completely erase that from memory, like, what kind of superpowers do you need?
Even younger dryers couldn't hide
No.
Göbekli Tepe and all those
Oh.
things. What technology you are using?
Yeah, and then if they have that power, why would they destroy it? Because then they would already be in control, right? I mean, why
Also, it
cover
would
it
have
up?
benefited them to
Yeah,
keep Tataria, because they would be like because they are working in the same direction. They are trying to increase the technology. They are trying to build better. So Tataria would have been helpful for
yeah,
them. And secondly, those people who say 1,000 year were added, it's bullshit, because every month, every day, there
yeah,
was a book published from
yeah.
the book published before, even before the printing press, because people were writing no non-stop books. We have
Yeah.
history to
And
prove every single day. There are
so
monuments, there were battles, there are graves of the people which can be carbon dated. Everything is there.
yeah, okay. So that's another thing. Like, if it was like a gigantic mudslide which covered the Earth, because the mudslide had to happen from Russia through Europe to America and then cover everything. It's like, why a mudslide? Why not just bombard it or whatever, right? Why a mudslide? But anyway,
Also,
that,
mudslide is
that,
easily testable. There is no
that would
mud.
leave, that would leave traces in the. You would think, right? But it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's a magic mudslide.
Yeah.
But
This idea is a cheap copy of Noah's flood.
yeah. But I would believe Noah's flood would be more realistic than
No,
this.
Noah's. I believe in Noah's flood. I'm saying the Tataria is like a cheap copy of that story, because
Yeah.
according to Noah's flood story,
Yeah.
there was an advanced civilization which was destroyed. They were pretty advanced.
The pre-Diluvian.
Yeah. And then
So-
humanity restarted. But with this, there is actually no mention or nothing. So, and this is just like a cheap copy that there was an advanced civilization. They just replaced water flood with mud flood. So also is stupid. Water flood is still, we can trace there, and Younger Dryas actually fit with Noah's flood. There is no scientific basis or any historical basis or even a legend regarding
Yeah,
Padaria.
and I came up. I had a sort of a slight interaction with Jay Anderson. I won't claim to know him, but I posted this. I'll put it up here, and I think this is basically how it works psychologically with a lot of people, because they've been lied to, right? So on such a grand scale. So what is happening is, like, the more outrageous the claims are put forward by people, the more true they must be. And the formula goes like this: the fact that nobody believes it is proof of its very veracity, and shows that the person who does believe has uncovered a cover-up, right? And that he's also superior to those people who don't believe, because they can't see through the cover-up. And so the idea is, the fewer people believe in something, the more true that something must be. And I think that's a really sort of silly way to approach things. But the point is, like, because people in their daily lives right now, there are a lot of people who, people like us, who sort of, for example, we just talked about Gunung Padang and the Bosnian Pyramids. If you talk to other people about those things, they think you're crazy, right? Because you don't have the video material on you, so you can't show it. And even if you could, then they would probably not look at it, and they would just think you're mad, right? And then, but for people like us, who don't have an understanding of history, who might not have, like, the right kind of education in these areas, they see these claims come by, and that sort of fits the stuff that they think they know. And then they think, like, okay, then, the lie must be even bigger than I thought it was. So, and there's no, because they can't trust the mainstream media anymore, and they can't trust mainstream archaeology, and they can't trust, they think they can't trust anything. So they are sort of cut loose, and they just believe whatever they find believable. And that's, the level of what's believable for somebody varies from person to person. And it does have to, it depends on your level of education, of course, and on your level of critical thinking. And but many people, of course, if people can believe whatever they want to believe, right? There's no limit to what you can believe. And I think this video sort of demonstrates what I'm talking about, probably better than I can verbalize.
In contact with her mind, and I'm now completely sure that.
Oh God!
Is this the best survival game ever made?
Wait 1 second.
Free advertisement.
Centimeters over her hands were shown to me during the 3 hours and 6 minutes of meeting, and I'm absolutely sure that these abilities were no tricks. The following is certainly difficult to understand and to believe for someone who hasn't experienced it, but I was really in contact with her mind, and I'm now completely sure that everything she said during the interview is the absolute truth about our
This is
world.
the point.
I'm going to interject here just for a second. This is a very, very fascinating thing that I've pondered a little bit on recently. If my coffee cup decided to start talking to me immediately, like if it grew a mouth and just started talking to me and told me anything at all, I would believe it. Because this coffee cup just showed me that my reality was in fact, partially at least, a lie. And that this new reality, in the way that it behaves, is now shown itself to me as being the truth. Therefore, everything that this coffee cup is going to relay to me, I will assume is the truth. And if that's what he's saying here, that's kind of what's happening. If I show you an impossibility, I am then more inclined to have you believe that whatever I say is going to be the truth. Your own objective view of reality has now been questioned and replaced by something else, something, more magical and something real. Therefore, you're going to trust whatever is delivering that message is telling you the truth, when in fact that might not be the truth. You might be being psyoped. And I say this with all due respect to everyone who's ever, in their own words, communicated with some type of entity who's shown them images or given them prophetic messages. Personally, I would just be cautious with that message because of the example I just gave you. My 2 cents.
So I think he's absolutely right here, and he hits the nail on the head, right? So I think what happened is that people's reality got shattered by recent events, the ones that I mentioned and many others, and that they are anchorless, right? They're drifting at sea, and they can't trust anybody, and they're often alone. They don't have a community, and if they do have a community, it's a community of like-minded conspiracy people who see a conspiracy under every stone and under every tree. And if you and the problem with conspiracies is, of course, that most of these conspiracies are very difficult to test, right? Because that's why they're conspiracies in the first place, right? Even with the UAP thing, we still haven't seen a UAP, right? We haven't seen any aliens. We haven't seen flying. We have seen pictures, and often they're fuzzy pictures, as most people point out.
Or we just see bright light in the sky.
Yeah. So that's a problem, right? And so people who are sort of driftless or drifting alone on the sea of conspiracies, it's very easy to fall in the trap of Tartaria or flat Earth or the giant ice wall in Antarctica,
but they can be proven, and they have been proven wrong. Like
but
Earth is not flat.
But the problem is, of course, then you got sort of counter videos, or they say like, oh yeah, but that was staged, or we don't trust the source.
No, but recently they took some flat earthers to Antarctica. There is like a whole thing happened just recently in this winter, in December or something. They took flat earthers there. They have proven. So
yeah.
So So the point is, like, it's still, I understand those who don't want to believe, they will not believe. But some things have been disproven. Something, it's very hard to prove.
Yeah, and I want to add one final thing. I think I'm not sure if we mentioned it last time, with the telepathy tapes. And the telepathy tapes are also a thing like that. When you send somebody the telepathy tapes, the first thing you get back is a video from a debunker. And I don't know if the person who sends that back to me has either seen the telepathy tapes themselves or even the debunker's debunking of the telepathy tapes. Because I think they didn't. And you just get back the debunking video. And then in the debunking video, they say some stuff that makes sense, right? But when, we unpacked it last time, when you sort of go into these the debunking of the telepathy tapes, clearly the debunkers don't have the full picture, right? They don't know much about any of this stuff.
They were using old arguments which were not applicable on telepathy tapes. They were just using random ideas, like the guy was putting the idea and that was it. So those debunking was not valid.
I want to say something else, because some people then said like, oh, but there's this paywall, right? And if somebody has a paywall or is asking for money, then automatically that person is a grifter, a charlatan, a fraudster, or whatever. But that's nonsense, right? Because most of these
totally nonsense.
Most of these people have no funds, right? They're just doing what they're doing out of love or idealism, or because they find it interesting.
But they need to pay their bills. How are they going to pay their bills?
And even if there's a paywall, right? Even if it is a grifter and he has a paywall, well, then you pay, and then after 1 month you find out, oh, it's bullshit, and then you stop paying, right?
Also, you can make a lot more money than debunking it if it's not true. So that's
Yeah.
not an argument that just because something is behind paywall, they need to pay their bills. Also, why they put it behind? Because they explained it. They went to a lot of companies to get sponsors. They did not get at that time. So they launched. They wanted to make a movie out of it, a documentary. So
Yeah.
they were not getting proper funding. So they launched it as a podcast.
Yeah,
With a
so paywall doesn't prove anything, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that somebody asked
No,
for
I
money.
don't think telepathy tapes have like paywalls.
Yeah, they do. There's like some more intricate videos that are actually behind the paywall. I haven't seen them yet because I don't pay. But basically, they're giving away their discoveries for free, because if you just look at their interviews like we did, then they're basically giving it away for free anyway. You just have to do a little bit of digging. And what I also wanted to say is like the same thing that they say about the telepathy tapes, or all this spiritual mumbo jumbo woo woo. They often also say it about Bitcoin and crypto, like influencers like us, that all the crypto influencers are riding around in Lamborghinis, and that they're all about self-enriching and dropping their bags on the bigger fool, and that Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme and built on nothing, and that's basically just held up by influencers. And but how can you disprove that, right? You can't, right? The only way you can sort of disprove it is just by believing in what you do and by following the evidence yourself, and then over time it will turn out to be true, because you have done your research, you have followed your own logic, and you have countless conversations with people within the field, and it's not bullshit because you've done your research. But for the people out, you can't really convince somebody on the outside. If that person is not ready yet or not willing to listen, it doesn't matter what you say. It really doesn't matter what kind of arguments or what kind of data, or it doesn't matter. So they will always say that you're a grifter or a charlatan or fraudster or stupid or whatever.
The point is, a lot of the time we will always have these kind of criticism. We will never get out of it. But the point is, what we need to do is to find the truth. Whatever we think is the truth, we just follow it. Eventually, everything will unite at one point. But until then, we all have to do our part. And I appreciate the critics, because we need criticism. We also need conspiracy theorists. When we have both sides, then we will be able to know what is true and what is not. And the fact is, there is a lot of conspiracy going on which are coming true, and
By
then
the way,
there is a lot of fake things going on.
For the people who do archaeology, maybe you should also dig up this one in the Faroe Islands. This is a pyramid on one of the Faroe Islands. It is known as a natural pyramid-shaped mountain called Khafre. Could be, it's interesting.
Yeah, just look for it, and then, wow.
The Faroe Islands. It does have the name. Right?
Yeah, I didn't know about that. I need to look more.
I don't know either, right? I just found it. It was sort of cool. Yeah. So anyway, follow Jay Anderson. He's a brilliant researcher. Follow Moraine Pools. He's also on Twitter, and watch the documentaries that we showed. We'll link them down below. Also check out our previous episodes. Next episode will probably be about the JFK files and some other files.
Very controversial space, but we are so excited for that.
Yeah, I hope,
because this is one theory which has been proven that all the conspiracy theories were right.
Yeah, and that one will be very, I hope we don't get banned because of it. But
we will be very careful with our words. We won't.
I'm not, to Steve and the organized. I'm not sure. I'll reach out to you and ask if you wanted to air on your platforms.
Yeah. I think it should be just on our platform, and we will try to be cautious, but it's not going to be nice because we're gonna say what what is in the JFK files. We won't give our opinion. By the way, technically it's right because we are just going to discuss what is written on those files. We are not just going to say what we believe. We will just discuss them, but it's going to be controversial.
Yeah, and it will also be about Epstein. So
Yeah.
it's going to be
Also it's going to be a
volatile.
lot of countries involved and so many things. So yeah, make sure
Yep.
if you are not in, if you are scared, don't share it.
Yeah.
But listen to us.
But with
we
the
will bring-
archaeology, I think we have the momentum with us. I think the coming 10, well, I think the coming century will be mind blowing. But I think it has so much momentum behind it right now. I think big stuff is going to be revealed soon. I think you can't stop this anymore. I think there's just it's too much stuff coming out, and it's just building up. You can't sweep it under the carpet anymore.
Yeah, well, so excited for the future. And if those symbols we saw in Europe flying over that, which they're calling fuel, and if they are symbols, then I think something big is about to happen. Also, one more thing, I just read somewhere that Earth's core is starting to reverse, spinning.
Okay, that's but we probably one of
This is, and then I think we are losing some milliseconds right now, but that can change and it could do something more. So we have to come back on that later as well. But yeah, something is happening to Earth, spiritually and physically.
I think that's actually true. And when you actually watch Ancient Aliens from Graham Hancock, and the talk about the younger dryads and what happened, and the traces that it left in the geological layers of the earth, there was this probably a comet, a rain of comets hitting the earth. What is it? The Taurids?
Auto meteors.
Yeah, well, anyway,
It's a torrid meteor belt, like is
I
there.
forgot
You go through twice a year.
Yeah, every 12,000 years you sort of go through that cycle.
No. But with Torrid, you see it every September, and I think there's one more time.
Yeah. But I mean, like the Earth is every sort of 12,000 years. You go. You don't only see it, but you actually go through it, right? And that's
you do.
That is sort of the revelation from ancient. I'm spoiling the ending, but it's still worth watching. But the idea that was conveyed in Göbekli Tepe and these other structures is that there is this sort of astronomical calendar which marks these cataclysmic events, and that's what they are warning us for. That in about X amount of years, which is 12,000 years, turns out, you go through these cataclysmic phases, and you better prepare in advance when they hit. And which is probably also why they built underground, and maybe why bunkers are so popular. But yeah, I'm not sure if they gonna protect you from these kind of cataclysms. You can probably better go out into space or something. But yeah.
And just to end this, there is like I think we went 2 hours. I think that's our longest podcast. But I'm just saying, with Earth spinning in reverse, there are a lot of warnings that in the end of time, sun will rise from the west.
Okay. We'll end on those prophetic words. I'm completely.
This is like a very famous, actually, end of time prediction.
Okay. The sun will
rise from the west.
From the west, sorry.
From the west, and that will be the sign of the end. This is obviously I'm talking from the Muslim side, not the Christian side. So it's written in there, one of the most authentic books, like of Hadith, not in Quran, but in Hadith. So this is like one of the biggest signs that end of the world is here.
That's when the earth goes into reverse.
Yeah. But this is a symbol. Also, it's written in a form of like a poetry, so it doesn't have to be exactly like that. It could mean something, but it is one of those things, like sun will rise from the west.
Okay. Well, let's end there, and because I'm really it always takes a lot of energy managing all these clips, and but it was fun, and
Yeah,
it was a great show.
I really like today's topics. They were fun. Anyway, let's end it. Have fun, guys. Bye.
Take care. Thanks for watching.